here today and live with Nadya Zhexembayeva. And Nadya, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Well, we're giving Facebook just a moment to kind of update itself. I want to be able to live tag Nadya here. Here we go. And there's going to be 2 levels of editing. And then I can already hear myself talking. Nadya, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Here we are right there. Well, we're giving Facebook just a moment to there you are. Update itself. I want to be able to live tag Nadya here. Here we go. All right, we're almost done. Going to be that piece, which is good. And then I can already hear myself. I think that's live tagged. So that is good. All right. We're going to move it back here. There you are. Now, this is very interesting because I have closed out my Facebook entirely, yet I'm still hearing what I was saying a few moments ago in my ears. And I have no idea why I'm doing that. I have no idea why I'm hearing that. Now it is gone. So that is really, really wonderful. Hey, everybody. So sorry about that, but wanted to make sure that Nadya could be live tagged. And now she should be seeing that she is live tagged. And I'm really excited about this because last week's guest that went live yesterday, Stephen Adler, and he's not on Facebook because he invented internet insurance and data privacy and all of that. So I did a special offline with Stephen Adler. He's doing a special Oceans Data Alliance conference at the United Nations. I'm going to be in attendance with that. And Nadya wrote books very, very similar to this entire thing, the Overfished Ocean Strategy, which is all about sustainability. I'm going to read one of the Amazon reviews, if you don't mind me doing that, Nadya.
I will be blushing, but I appreciate it. Every comment.
This is Victoria. This is a couple of years ago. She says, what a great book for diving into the possibility side of the sustainable future. I very much appreciate the positive, let's roll up the sleeves attitude of Zhexembayeva's writing. I am saying your name wrong already, so I'm going
Everyone does. So just enjoy the ride.
Zhexembayeva. Zhexembayeva. Her writing, the 5 principles framework, is very clear and helpful in seeing the path and the mindset shift businesses should be considering. So a little bit of praise right there. I am rambling just a little. I'm waxing eloquent, and we're about to start the interview here in a moment, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to practice your last name a couple more times just because I want to nail this. Zhexembayeva.
But you can call me Nadya. Everyone calls me Nadya.
Well, I'm going
my real name, so don't worry about it.
I'm going to do that, but I have to say your full name correctly, at least at the beginning and at the end.
I appreciate
Nadya.
Well, everyone asks me why I don't give it up, and my husband has a much easier last name, but this name is full of such history. Yeah. So I feel commitment and responsibility to this name.
Yeah. Well, and it puts us Americans to the test a little bit. United States, North Americans. We only know one language, so this is the least I can do for you, Nadya. Okay. Zhexembayeva. Zhexembayeva. All right. All right. We are live in 3, 2. We are live with Nadya Zhexembayeva. Nadya, are you ready to talk?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva is a business owner, educator, speaker, and author specializing in reinvention. Nadya helped such organizations as the Coca-Cola Company, IBM, Cisco, Erste Bank, and many others to reinvent their products, processes, and leadership practices. I'm going to add, she is now a 4-time TEDx speaker and graduated from the same college that I did, Case Western Reserve University. So it is so wonderful to have Nadya Zhexembayeva on the talk today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Very excited about our conversation.
You are originally from Kazakhstan in the former USSR. You grew up in the 70s, and you were part of that generation where some of the atrocities and the scary things, by your own admission, had ended, and yet we weren't in this new former Soviet state. And you talk about, I know that from watching your other talks, just for context, but I love what you say in your talk, which is called the one that I'm looking at right now, the Titanic Syndrome, why companies sink and how to reinvent your way out of any disaster. You say that reinvention is the key to sustainability. And when we actually choose to proactively reinvent ourselves, then we earn the right to choose who we want to be in the future. I think it's wonderful. Please, Nadya, take us behind the talk.
Well, for me, the whole transformation from reinvention, from sustainability to reinvention, took about 15 years. I am by education and in terms of practice, I'm not an environmental scientist. I'm a business scientist. And it was a question for me, how do we help companies understand survival in a language that doesn't feel like guilt or punishment or limitation, but language that gives business excitement, gives them inspiration, gives them pragmatic tools. So Titanic Syndrome was a way to scare, and reinvention is the way to uplift. And I truly believe that the thought we used to have, that reinvention is something that is surface, very vain, is a flawed thought. Absolute majority of the world moves forward through reinvention, not innovation. That's why I'm championing this word.
Yeah, well, and I just think that you have such a matter-of-fact way of getting directly down to the heart of things and really marrying the environmental issues that we all know that we're in with business sustainability practices and even just some really common sense things that no one had ever laid out for me before. One real nugget that I'm taking away is you talk about the business cycle. I mean, why is it that our grandparents here in the United States, expect us to work at the same job for the rest of our lives, and we don't work at the same job? It's because the life cycle went from 75 years per your talk at the turn of the last century or 100 years ago. At the turn of this century, all of a sudden it's only 15 years, and now it's 7 years. And you take that and you say that there's a half-life. So if you're on the first 7 year, the first part, that's 3.5 years, it's going to go up. And then on the last 3.5 years, it's going to go down. And we could probably extract an even shorter half-life from there. You've been able to lay these things out in a very common sense way to make really a very empowering point to me and everyone else listening, which my takeaway is, hey, it's not my fault. There's nothing wrong with me. I have to change the way that we think because I'm living on a different planet, a different point in time than my grandfather was.
And for many of the young people listening, and by young, I include myself, I consider myself still young, anywhere until 50, let's put it in a young category. But any of you listening who have bosses who grew up and developed their leadership practice in the 20th century, you're probably feeling that pressure as well, because these are wonderful, amazing, very experienced individuals who are trying to impart wisdom, but that wisdom is no longer applicable because they literally grew up in a different world. So the world in which we had long, predictable life cycles, whether it's for products, for processes, for business practices, or for whole companies, that time is gone. We are collecting now data every year, and I have in front of me data from this year, and I'm looking at the numbers of how often do you need to reinvent to survive, and I'll just give you the latest numbers. About 13% of all the people we polled, and we polled over 2,000 people, about 13% say that today, to survive, they need to reinvent every year. Every year. This is the speed we simply never been prepared to. And then another 33.6% said that they need to reinvent every 2 to 3 years to survive. So this is the world.
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds.
Wow.
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds.
So Now, nearly half of all respondents have to reinvent every year, every 2 years, or every 3 years, under 3 years. This is the reality that is not just about the mindset. It's not just about soft issues. This is hard issues. This is how do we budget? This is how do we think about investment? This is how do we think about our product portfolio? This is how do we think about long-term capital expenditures, like building a plant? This is a whole new world. And in that sense, you're absolutely right. It's not our fault. It just takes a moment to reframe our understanding of the world as it works.
One of the things that I'm going to tie in that so many of my guests talk about is just this idea of the locus of control. Is it internal? Do we have the agency to proactively beat change to the punch and create a hopeful future in, to some degree, according to our own values and how we want it to be? Or are we going to wait and get kind of clocked on the side of the head with the hard realities of life? And again, your quote, when we choose to reinvent ourselves, we earn the right to choose who we want to be. Powerful.
For me, that's the puzzling piece. We know from decades of science that if you want to survive, whether it's in your personal career or personal life, when you know that it's time to change, but you're still too afraid to let go and you're holding on to a job or to a team or to a task or even to a profession that you kind of know is not going anywhere, or we're talking about business, when you are in a segment, in a product line, in a geography, in a pricing or business model that you know is not working, but you're still not doing the change. We know from decades of business, the only time you can do it well is when you are in a good time. The old saying goes, don't fix what's not broken. That is the most dangerous statement today, because we know that if you start fixing it when it's already broken, so this is the life cycle, we go up and we go down. Mm-hmm. If you start reinventing on the fall, your chances of discovery, there's at least one research shows that your chances of ever recovering to the peak performance is only 10%. If you start fixing it when it's broken, you're done. It's too late. But how do we kind of build the forces, build the energy to reinvent when it's not yet broken, when everything is still good around it? That's the real challenge and the real leadership courage that is needed to make that happen.
This is a little bit of a super contemporary pop culture reference right now that I usually don't make these because I'm not usually on the bleeding edge. But there's a new show. I don't know why it's on National Geographic, but it's called Valley of the Boom. And it's all about Netscape 20 years ago when they did their first IPO. Now, I don't know why it is on National Geographic of all things.
Well, there's geography involved. I'm assuming.
I think it's maybe National Geographic has to do business, mini series to stay viable. Maybe they're taking your advice. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing this, the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're seeing what you said about the bosses that grew up in the last century and were business experts in the last century. You actually see that played out, where they had hired in a CEO who was a really good CEO, but he didn't know the internet. And so his mantra was, hey, we have to go 4 years of really solid growth and then we can go public. Everybody else is talking about, no, we need to beat Microsoft. We need to beat this before we get gobbled up. And so you really see that tension being played out. And the amazing thing is this is all stuff that happened 20 years ago. Actually, when I was at Case Western Reserve as an undergraduate over 20 years ago, when Case had the one of the earliest internet systems before it really went public, and they were known for that. And so it's really interesting to see all this played out, see the backstory that's, kind of they're hamming it up, but it's also somewhat accurate and tongue in cheek a little bit. But then you're thinking, man, this was 2 decades ago. So if they were pivoting, my point is, they were pivoting that much 2 decades ago, how much more do we have to hyper pivot now?
We have to. And at the same time, this is a tricky question. Every time I speak about reinvention, somebody comes up in the audience and put the hand up and says, okay, so does it mean that we need to let everything go? For example, take my values. Does it mean that I need to reinvent my values every 3 years or every 2 years or every 1 year? And it's exact opposite, actually. When I see companies that are successful with reinvention are the ones who truly know what can be changed and what is non-negotiable, that is never going to go away. And I often say that the issue of reinvention, the issue of change, the hardest change issue, or the hardest question of change management is not change, it's continuity. It's not what do we need to change. We all know what we need to change. We're annoyed with it. It's in the hallways, it's in the business meetings, it's everywhere. We know what we need to change because we're fed up with it. The harder question is, what do we keep? How do we not throw a baby with the bathwater? Do we even understand what customers are really buying from us? I had a facilitation session for top management of a very large corporation one time. They are a business-to-business company, so it's harder for them to nail down what their value proposition is, maybe. I'm making excuses for them right now, but I'm not going to release their name, so I hope nobody's hurt in the process. So I'm facilitating this session, and this is CEO, all the C-suite, and the C-1, and about 40 people in the room. And I asked them, what is the value that you're selling? It was more than 40 minutes in the room, and they still didn't have an answer. They don't know. They know what they're selling in form of a product, but the value bought by the customer, is it speed? Is it cost? Is it efficiency? Is it whatever else? What is the value? Not the actual product. These are two different things. I remember the very famous saying from someone that you never really buy hammer and nails, you buy holes in the walls. Hammer and nails is just a product, it's a solution, but this is not what you're buying. That is the hardest question. What is the value that is non-negotiable? What are we not changing? And that's why reinvention is this beautiful dance between change and continuity.
We've been enjoying this discussion with Nadya Zhexembayeva. Her talk is called Titanic Syndrome, Why Companies Sink and How to Reinvent Your Way Out of Any Disaster. And we're going to be right back with Nadya in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And we're back with Nadya Zhexembayeva. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Nadya a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her talk. Are you ready, Nadya?
Absolutely.
All right. First question: were you invited to speak, or did you apply? And you've given 4 TEDx talks at this point, so feel free to.
Every time I was invited to speak.
All right.
And the first time I had no clue what I was doing, and it's a bad talk. I was talking about women. Actually, I was way ahead of my time.
That was the first one.
It was 10 years ago, 2009.
I saw that. And you got up and you basically said, I don't know what to talk about for a specifically women's talk, which is really interesting because it was interesting to me. We're going to take a moment for this because that was very curious because I mean, I'm leaning in, and my summary of what I thought that you were saying is, your upbringing in the former Soviet Union, there wasn't that much of a difference, and women are going to lead and men are going to lead, and you're just going to get the job done.
Yeah. The surprising thing is that there are many gifts that Soviet Union gave me, and I am very thankful for my childhood. I have no regrets. I'm very happy that I was born where I was born. I'm sure my parents and grandparents would say differently because they had to suffer, and some of them were executed and some of them were in prison. I was not. So by the time I was born, it was not super nice, but there are a lot of beautiful things. And one of those beautiful things is the fact that women were in every way completely equal. So the issue of gender inequality never came up in my life until I moved outside of my country. Now I can see different things showing up in different countries. But that talk, the main thing I wanted to say with that talk is that women don't really speak about themselves much. So the whole question of I have nothing to say about women is an important question. Why? Why do I take it for granted? And why women don't say much about themselves? So that's, but that was a bad talk, and I was invited.
Well, I respectfully disagree, and I think it's very empowering. I think, just having this discussion, I think that women all over the world could learn a lot from watching your talk, because how empowering is it in light of, Me Too and many of the things that largely Western societies are dealing with right now because of all of the wrong things that have been done. How wonderful for you to have been, at least in your experience, largely free from a lot of that, just because of the way that the equal society. I mean, that's the whole thing. That was everyone is an equal. And in capitalist society, we don't necessarily have equality. And now we've got this massive move towards equality, and we're wrestling with what that really means. So I would respectfully disagree.
Thank you. But that was a long answer to Blitz question. I was invited to all four talks.
Great. Well, are you a memorizer, improviser, or a blender?
I used to be an improviser. The very last talk, I actually wrote the talk, but it ended up being blended.
Okay. What's a tip, tool, or technique that helps you?
I like talking to somebody right before getting on stage, because I'm insanely nervous right before. So I always have somebody next to me who physically talks. And I also had videographers with me the last 1 or 2 times, which relaxes you anyway, because they're good people and you need to say hi to them.
What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
My third talk was in Klagenfurt, Austria. I was talking about sustainability in business and overfished ocean strategy, and my heel, I actually fell through the stage about halfway. And
through the stage?
Yeah, and I got stuck. And I said, I'm breaking through. And my husband to this day thinks that that's the most beautiful thing I said, because I am breaking through quite literally. So he thought that was a beautiful metaphor. But yes, my heel got stuck in the stage. I not fell, but like half of my heel fell through and got stuck.
So you finished the talk shoeless, or
no,
what did you do from
yanked it out?
You yanked it out
and joked about it. You can still see it. It's all on tape. It was not cut out. I just said, "Oh, I'm breaking through," and yanked it out.
We've been enjoying this Blitz Round with Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva, and her talk is called "The Titanic Syndrome: Why Companies Sink and How to Reinvent Your Way Out of Any Disaster." If you want to check out Dr. Nadya's other talks, we will have the links up there at our show notes page at bethetalk.com. And we're also going to have a link to Dr. Nadya's website, chiefreinventionofficer.com, chiefreinventionofficer.com. And we're going to be right back in just a moment with Nadya Zhexembayeva's final word of advice. And we're back with Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva. It is time for her final word of advice. What is it?
Well, I would borrow from all the amazing people who said it before me. Every century is a different challenge. Our century challenge, and I believe truly, will be reinvention. We are facing the amount of staggering disruptions that I don't know when was the last time they simultaneously were here. Political reinvention, reinvention of our economy as a capitalist society, reinvention in light of technological changes, especially artificial intelligence and robotics, reinvention because of health, reinvention about culture, education. I think this is the time to make reinvention our signature skill of the century. Just 100 years ago, most people did not read or write or count. This century, most of us do. What should be the signature basic literacy skill of 21st century? For me, among the top few, reinvention is top on the list. So that would be my advice. Make it a habit. Make it a natural skill. Do something new every day, and you will be surprised how big that muscle will become.
Well, Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for beautiful conversation.
All right, that's a wrap. And yeah, I'd love to get a bonus session in with you.
Sure. And I know there is
That
a watch
work?
party. I actually invited tons of people to a watch party, and many joined on Facebook.
All right. So that's why we've got 7 people online right now, which is actually better than normal. So, and I will mention this. This is a really easy way to get some free Q&A in. If you send us a question when we're not recording, when I close up the episode, like right now, we may have a little bit of Q&A time. Sure. We also have Jitendra here. I'm going to let him say a couple of words. We're going to do this bonus interview, and then we're going to come right back with Jitendra. But how are you, Jitendra? Welcome.
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Nathan?
I'm doing real well. Say hi to Dr. Nadya.
Dr. Nadya, it was great listening to you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful to meet you. Very, very nice to meet you. Hi, Jitendra.
So we're going to get we're going to have a really wonderful conversation with Jitendra, who has found a way, some real promising research with antibodies and these resistant strains of viruses, and he's found a way to start attacking them in a really powerful way. At least that's my layman's summary of your talk, Jitendra. And I do have, I'm born to medicine, and I'm married to healthcare as well. So wow. These issues are things that I'm very familiar with, these super bacteria. And I was really, I love the comedic part in the middle of your talk, but we're gonna get back to that in a moment after we're done. So anyway, thank you so much. And we're going to escort Jitendra back to the green room over there. Mm-hmm. And shoot, what shall we talk about in the bonus round here? I think we can just kind of open it up, because we've touched on 2 or 3 of your 4 talks at this point, Nadya.
Yes. So there was a number of them, 2 on reinvention, or connected to reinvention, 1 on sustainability, 1 on the role of women.
And women,
I think the last one, I can say a couple of things. 1 is on the
okay, well, not right now, because I'm not rolling.
Sure.
So,
sure. So I can say a couple of things. 1 is maybe on Titanic syndrome, what it is, if that is people wondering what it is. Mm-hmm. But a different way, if you want to ask me about kind of the talk itself. So how do you prepare, how do you structure it, and so on, I'm also happy to share that.
Sure. Well, great. Well, we'll just see where this goes. So we are going to come right back online here in 3, 2. We are live again with Nadya Zhexembayeva. Nadya, are you ready to talk?
I am absolutely ready for a round.
All right, this is a bonus episode with Dr. Nadya, so just dial into the prior episode for the full bio. Dr. Nadya has done sustainability really her whole career. She's worked with Coca-Cola. She's worked with a number of very, very high-end corporations such as IBM, Cisco, et cetera, et cetera. She's given now 4 TEDx talks, 3 of which are live. We're waiting for the 4th one. And there's just so much to talk about. I know that I read in the last episode a little Amazon review of one of your books, which is called The Overfished Ocean Strategy. And we're just going to have a little bit of bonus time. So anything that Dr. Nadya would like to talk about, I think that where we wanted to start was just in general advice for giving, your upcoming TEDx Talk Universe. If you want to, you can apply or get invited to speak depending on who you know and how you present yourself. So Dr. Nadya, how did this whole journey start for you? I know you were invited to speak every time. How did it all go on the front end for you?
Well, most of the times it is about, are you comfortable speaking and do you want to speak? I have many people in my life who hate the whole public speaking, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is not for everyone. But if you do have something to share, my big advice is find a way to share it in a way that works for you. So all of this endless trainings that explain to you how you need to talk and how you need to move your arms and how you need to move around and all of that, for me, is a horrible distraction, but also it's a horrible way to lose you in the process. Mm-hmm. So I run actually occasionally workshops where I help people discover their own speaking style. And you will be amazed how this works once the person stops fighting with themselves. So if you like moving, move. If you like standing in one place, stand in one place and root yourself. And then you will be a much more powerful person, because it won't be about you faking it, but it will be about your audience, because you will forget about yourself. It will be about them, because you're there for them. So that's my biggest advice on talk prep.
I know for a lot of people, including myself, my own journey as a public speaker, the first thing I did was join Toastmasters. It's a very cost-effective, usually time-effective, if it's a well-run club, way to get started in the field. And sometimes you do pick up some of this, exaggerated gestures. And that's really what a lot of what you're talking about right now, that we can get so into a certain school of public speaking, not necessarily Toastmasters. It could be any school of thought. And I love what Dr. Nadya, what you did in your talk, the Titanic syndrome, your TEDx talk. You basically went up there and said what you just said to us. You said, in public speaking world, they're going to tell you to absolutely do two things. And you said, here's number one, here's number two. I'm doing neither. I'm talking to you about sustainability and why we need to think ahead. And that just worked because you acknowledged, the normal stagecraft is that we're going to, and the normal thing, I'm going to break that because I want to be real. And you're talking about such an important topic of sustainability, not just in the environment, but also in business and also in our own life. So when you're talking about something that close to home, that relevant, you actually did a very important instructional piece. I know from my own instructional design background, the most important thing is to gain attention and establish the relevancy for other adults. And sometimes we just get so hung up on the flowery gestures without a whole lot of substance that we forget that there's 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever, in the entire online viewing audience. And if we don't get right to the point, especially if it's a real life and death issue like sustainability, that we don't need to butter, we don't need to sell why it's so important, we get it. And you just went right into there and landed it right from the beginning.
I think that's the biggest challenge, right? How do you respect the time that people give you? So the talk you're talking about had few thousand people in the audience, and it has some 100,000 views right now. So 100,000, 120,000 people gave you 15 minutes of their life. So multiply it by hundreds, whatever, 20,000. This, you just stole couple of lives, right? So
really lifetimes. It's a quarter hour times 100,000 people and whatever it is. So do the math. That's probably a couple of lifetimes.
And considering how much of our life we are sleepwalking, this is serious request. So then can you be all about that? And then everything physically falls into places. So the way you stand, the way you move, the way you flow, all of it will fall in places once you truly, truly give a moment to the audience, to the people in front of you. And it's always one-to-one. I think I say that in one video. I had a videographer follow me and he asked me a lot of questions. And I said it, when I'm talking to one small facilitation team or thousands of people, it's always one-to-one. It's a one-to-one relationship, whether you have a stadium in front of you or you're sitting in front of one person or you sit in front of a camera like we're doing now.
Well, and that's another thing when people are preparing, when I'm preparing, when anyone is preparing for this kind of a talk, how did you navigate that? Because you're going to walk out on stage, there's 1,000 people there. There's enormous pressure to kind of do the normal speaker thing, which is acknowledge the live audience and be in the moment. Yet at the same time, you've got a potentially much larger online audience. And if you if you're doing the normal live audience thing and acknowledging the moment, they're almost at odds with each other. So I've seen many of these talks where somebody is acknowledging whatever was going on in the room that day right before they came on. But I'm watching this on YouTube right now and I feel out of the loop. So my question to you is, how did you navigate that? Did you just go completely for the viewing audience on YouTube? Did you find a way to kind of do both, or did you just kind of pick one or the other?
I think by now, especially if we're talking about TED and TEDx format, I think we all understand that this is bigger than any one of us, and it's bigger than any one event hosted by one location or one partner. So the rule of the game is, and they do give you a lot of coaching, and one of the coaching is, do not waste the precious time on the chilling and warming up the audience. They are warmed up, they understand the game. So I would make a choice, and my choice was not to do any warm up at the beginning and just get into it. But what helps is that before the talk and after talk, I'm actually with the audience, right? I'm walking through the hall, I answer questions. There are sometimes interviews packed up. There's people want to talk to you and when you're waiting for a toilet, because it's always very busy hallways and everyone is in line. So I don't feel like I'm cheating the audience if I do give them my time. It just, the stage, if we understand the rules of the game, we have to be respectful that this is not just for us who are here for a day or for a few hours in this location. This is for the whole audience. This is the whole idea of ideas were shared. This is why TED is a free event, because it's thousands and thousands of free educational videos for the whole world who doesn't have money to go to elite university. So this can substitute much of what you can get in elite universities. It cannot do everything. I understand that 15 minutes is simplification. 15 minutes or 18 minutes or whatever is the format you're working with right now is extreme simplification, and very often you cannot dig into the nuances. But at least you can point people in a direction so they can know where to dig. And in that sense, I think we need to be respectful of the fact that this is not just about us sitting in one room. So the way I navigate it, I don't acknowledge the audience in TEDx format. When I'm in different sessions, I always do. So I joke with the audience, I talk about the people before me, I talk about people after me, but that's a different format.
Yeah, well, let's actually change the subject just a little bit, because you've written a couple of different books. One of the books is called The Overfished Ocean Strategy. The other book is Embedded Sustainability, which it looks like you co-wrote. A lot of us speakers are also authors, and once you've been writing books and seeing how relatively easy it is to self-publish, you realize that the real issue is getting readers. And it looks like you traditionally publish both of those. Can you talk a little bit about, how you built your audience for the book, how you were able to land a contract? And I'm assuming all of this, we didn't cover any of that, but just from looking at the professionalism and just the look of your books, I can tell they look like they're traditional and very well reviewed and very well read.
So I published 2 times as an author or co-author. I have a self-published book coming now, and it's a living book, meaning that you pay once and it's released every 2 months in a new format. And that's a self-publishment. And then we've done a lot of chapters or co-editors or some other, I don't even know how many, 6, 7 books in that format. I was very, very lucky because a person who published many times was the one who invited me to be co-author on embedded sustainability. That's Chris Laszlo. And that book was just selected into best sustainability books of all time by Book Authority. So I'm very thankful for him guiding me through what a book publishing is. Again, I'm probably a non-traditional person, but I also think it's a sign of the times. I've never had a book agent. I always work directly with the publisher. And there are a number of publishers who will work with you if you have an authority. And since I'm an academic in my first life, I am a scientist. I was a reviewer for my second publisher, Buried Collar. And Buried Collar is a very selective publishing house. And I was reviewing books for them, meaning other people would write books. And I, as an expert, say, is this worthy or is it crap, or what do I suggest changing, and so on, which is a beautiful experience. Nobody sits there and kind of craps on you. You get real advice from people in your sphere. And so I reviewed.
Well, it's a peer review. You basically peer reviewed not a journal, but books.
Whole book. So you read it for weeks and you write a huge report for them, how you would restructure it and what you understood from it. So it's a beautiful experience, and I was very thankful to Barrett Kohler for that. And then one day I had an idea for a book because one of my articles was performing very well. And I sent them this article and I said, I think this could be developed into a book. And I sent it to the person who was my contact, the editor, and he said, let's think about it. And that's how we developed the concept for the second book, Over First Ocean Strategy. The third book, Titanic Syndrome, we actually went in a different route. We said that we need to crowd write it. So hundreds of people wrote it with us, and tons of companies practiced whatever we're writing about in their companies and gave us feedback. And we also said that it makes no sense to spend 3, 4, 5 years writing a book if we're talking about speed of change. So if it's a book about speed of change and it takes 4 years to bring it to the market, we are too late. So how about we write it and publish it as we go, and it always stays relevant, and the newest research is always in the next edition and next edition. It's going well so far. We are very surprised with the response, both feedback and the money, the purchases. So I would go both ways. I think you need to be comfortable with your choice. In my case, I do public speaking. I have a nice mailing list by now. So if you have that, self-publishing is an option. If you're just starting out, you need support of somebody who has a reach and who can take care of production and layout and graphics and all of that things.
You don't want your first book to look homemade.
No,
even if it is.
Absolutely not.
That sounds like what you're saying. Dr. Nadya Zhexembayeva, thank you so much for this bonus content. I want to let everybody that's listening to the bonus episode know you can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com to get links to watch all of Dr. Nadya's TEDx talks. And we will also have a link to her website, chiefreinventionofficer.com. You got the .com for that.
Yes, absolutely.
What's your final word of advice in light of what we talked about today in this session?
I think the most important thing is don't be afraid to break the rules. The rules of publishing say go through the agent. I didn't. The rules of publishing say publish with a big house. We're now self-publishing and we're doing great. Same with speaking. A lot of rules say stand this way, wave this way. I don't. And I think you need to find a place in which you are speaking your truth and you are doing what is the most true to you. So don't be afraid to break the rules. Know the rules, but don't be afraid to break them.
Nadya Zhexembayeva, thank you so much for joining us today for this bonus episode.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who is joining.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
And watching it and still on. I know tons of people are still in terms of my watch party. So I know you will have an amazing talk right after this. So I don't want to hold you.
Well, any advice for Jitendra here, who is you are our newest talk alumni, and Jitendra is about to go on the recorder with me. So any advice for him?
This is beautiful and very easy. You make us very comfortable. So I really appreciate it. You're a beautiful host, and it makes it very easy for us to talk when you are guiding us through. So
I love hearing that. Well, great. Well, I'm going to escort Dr. Nadya to the green room. Jitendra, I'm going to do the same thing, and I can still see you there. I'm going to actually put you on the other side of me. There's a weird way that this works. And here he comes back on. Now he's on my right, which is where I like to have my guests for some reason, because it defaults the other way. Just a strange little quirk right there. So let's do your bio here and make sure that I've got everything. Jitendra Pant, I'm saying your name correctly?
Yes.
All right, very good. Okay. A passionate biomedical engineer who wants to revolutionize the biomed industry. Jitendra Pant is a scientist during the day and a novelist in the evening. Well, that's pretty interesting. Your website is, well, you got the LinkedIn, any website. Upcoming book is A Fool Who Ate His Hunger. A Fool Who Ate His Hunger. And the name of the talk is Possible End of the Superbug Antibiotic-Resistant Bacteria.
All right.
All right. You ready to rock?
I think so.
All right. Well, we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Jitendra Pant. Jitendra, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready, Nathan. Thank you for inviting me.
Jitendra Pant is a passionate biomedical engineer who wants to revolutionize the biomed industry. He's a scientist during the day and a novelist in the evening. Jitendra Pant, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much.
Your talk is called Possible End of the Superbug Antibiotic-Resistant Bacteria. And I love this because very kind of scientific oriented talk. Really, really important because we've got all of these things in our world today where these, you wash your hand using this alcohol. It used to be a germ killer, and it's not killing the germs anymore. And I hear about it all the time because Talk Universe knows I come from a very healthcare oriented family. You had kind of a funny spot in your talk where it goes from a scientific talk to a kind of a stand-up act, and everybody's roaring in the aisle with laughter. You said, can we accomplish this? How can we accomplish? And you basically say, can we? And you say, no. And you help us understand that no isn't the answer. The no is the answer. It's actually an acronym for nitrous oxide. And it must have been all filled with engineers because everybody is hooting and howling. And you got a pretty good applause that I think the likes of Jerry Seinfeld would have envied.
Yeah. So I would like to make a small correction here. So it's nitric.
Please do.
It's nitric oxide. And
what did I say? Nitrous oxide?
Nitrous oxide. And a lot of people
the correct
yeah, it's nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide, not nitrous oxide.
Yes, you're right.
Thank you for doing that. And thank you for schooling me on the correction because it took you 3 times for me to understand. Nitric oxide. Back over to you.
All right. So I think it's not your mistake because a lot of people confuse NO as nitrous oxide because it's the laughing gas, and that's more popular than nitric oxide in the journal word. But I believe nitric oxide is a magical molecule, and I believe that the answer for a lot of future medical problems is going to be a no in a good way, and that's why I was so excited to share this passion about nitric oxide with the rest of the world, which is also the topic of my PhD. And I just finished my PhD in December 2018. So
congratulations, 1 month old, Dr. Jitendra Pant.
Yes.
I should have said.
Yes.
Congratulations. Well, I love this because, it's not nitrous oxide, but you could have just released laughing gas into the crowd, even though it's not that. I'm a little bit of a nerd. I'm just seeing the humor in this whole thing. So congratulations, and please tell us more. I know from the talk, there's all kinds of possibilities in terms of other, you mentioned sexual health and a bunch of other antibacterial kind of applications. And I know that one time I sat next to a guy on a plane who was coming up with a latex substitute because of allergies that people have. In medical fields for latex. So does this kind of help out with that a little bit as well?
Yes. So what essentially we are trying to do here is we are not coming up with a substitute for latex, but we are improving the existing latex condoms. Because if you hear it from a woman perspective, it will make more sense because they complain about getting UTIs post an intercourse, and In scientific word, it is also termed as honeymoon cystitis, which means that post honeymoon people are prone, women are more prone to UTIs, and the way a male body is designed, they also get exposed to those bacteria, but they are safer as compared to a woman. So it's a huge problem. And I am pretty sure if a woman is listening to this talk right now, they would agree with me. And that's why we realized there are a lot of women scientists in the lab. And one day we were discussing this problem, and we started thinking, how can we make use of this antibacterial material that we have, nitric oxide, and how can we integrate it into an existing condom? And that's how this entire field of research came in, and then we have filed a patent, and hopefully this product will soon come into the market. So we are solving that problem. Yeah, sorry.
Who owns the patent? Is it University of Georgia? Is it your team? Is it how does that work?
So the way it works is the University of Georgia files it on behalf of the scientists. So this particular invention includes me and my PI, Dr. Hitesh Handa. So university has some share in it, but it is not solely owned by them.
Oh, great. So it's a share, it's a collective then.
Yes, it's a collective.
Excellent. So do you see yourself doing this kind of research for years to come, or do you want to pivot to do other things eventually, or what would you say?
So my answer to both your question is yes. I want to continue this, but I also want to do other things. I have co-founded a company called Innovita Biomedical with my existing PI, Dr. Hitesh Handa, which will be based in Athens. It is you can call it a spin-off from University of Georgia. So we'll be bringing a lot of things that I mentioned in my TEDx talk. We are very excited to bring this technology to market. We have collaborated with Department of Defense Center for Disease Control and Prevention, National Institute of Health, who are funding our research. And recently we have submitted few SBIR grants for bringing our technology to market. So hopefully, yes, this technology will come to market soon. But besides that, I also like to help or assist people in making what should I say, making the best out of their PhD. And when I started my journey from India, I come from a very small place, and a lot of times small things which are available to others very easily can be very difficult for a person in the lack of guidance. And that's what I try to do. I see a lot of people who are old complaining that if somebody would have guided me when I was a kid, I would have done this, I would have done that. So it's a complaint that everybody has. So I sometimes feel that this is a moral responsibility, that once you achieve little things, you should share it with others, and you should help others to go to the next level. And that's why writing this book called A Fool Who Ate His Hunger came into being. And the essence of that book is to never stop believing in yourself. The essence of that book is also to not show you a fairy world where everything is perfect. The essence of that book is to show you that there will be difficulties. Of course, you will have to deal with different kind of people from time to time, but in the end, if you have perseverance, if you are hardworking, it is going to pay off.
I love that you are both a scientist and a novelist. So does one side feed the other for you?
I would say yes. The way, so when you were talking to Nadya, I really liked what she mentioned, that you have to be yourself when you are connecting with the audience. But in the meanwhile, you should not forget it's a group of people you are talking to. So connecting is very important. And the fact that I am an upcoming novelist, or I want to be a novelist, comes from my basic nature. I'm a person who goes more by heart. I think more from my heart, and so definitely I try to be more creative. I try to be more of a risk taker, even in my research. For example, this latex idea. I remember when we first talked about this in the lab, like there was a joke going around, and people thought that I'm just saying it to crack a joke. I'm never going to make a latex which will help UTI. And I try to bring the creativity part, which makes me a novelist, also into science, and I try to do new experiments. And I think they are not separated from each other. If you are a scientist, you have to be very creative. And you have to be partially emotional, if not completely, because unless or until you connect with the people or with your customers or with your clients or say patients, you will not be able to give your 100% to solve a problem.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Jitendra Pant, Dr. Jitendra Pant. His talk is called The Possible End of the Superbug Antibiotic Resistant Bacteria, which is a huge breakthrough. We are going to be right back with Jitendra Pant in just a moment for the Blitz Round.
All right.
And we are back with Jitendra Pant. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Jitendra a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Jitendra, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
First question for you. Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
So I applied. I applied to speak because the time when I gave the TED Talk, I was a student. So as a student, you have to qualify and you have to prove them that you are on par with people who are invited. So of course, it was challenging, and there was a pool of more than 200 applicants. And fortunately, I was in top 3. So yeah, it helped.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I would say blender.
And what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
I try to put humor and emotions in all my speeches. And I heard you belong to Toastmasters. I have got my training from Toastmasters. But even before Toastmasters, I have given speeches. I have heard a lot of speeches, and I always feel that the talks that I remember till date, the talks that I've heard 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and I still remember till date are the talk with which I connected emotionally. So I try to put emotions in my talk, and humor is one such emotions, and feeling pain is one such emotions. So I try to be more of a human than a scientist even in my scientific talk. So that's my advice. You are talking to people, not to walls. So you have to feel. You have to be honest. You have to feel the pain of people you are serving, and you have to feel the people who are listening to you are enjoying the talk and taking a message home. The point is not to prove that you are an expert of a field. The point is to make them understand, even if it is little bit. Make sure that they understand the crux of your talk.
Jitendra, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Right before my talk, I guess. So when they were hooking the microphone near over the ear, near our face, so it was glued. So my microphone was glued here, and I was not expecting it. And it's kind of an uncomfortable feeling because you're already suited up, you are on stage, and you are already nervous. And there's a lot of people, and it's a TEDx stage, so there's a lot at stake. You cannot. TEDx talk are so repeated that you want to give your 100%. And when these kind of, it's a very small thing. It's a very small thing.
This thing was taped to your cheek.
Yes.
Basically. So if you can imagine imagine being nervous, the spotlight's there, you're getting ready to go out, and they tape this thing that you're feeling, this weird feeling on your cheek. Yes. That's pretty unnerving.
Yes. And you have to keep calm, you have to keep smiling, and you have to keep going. And that thing got over in a matter of 4 or 5 minutes. But yes, it was little weird for me to have it on my face.
Every little thing that you can prepare for will help us actually give a great talk. But who's going to think? I mean, that's the kind of detail that you don't normally know about
before the talk.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, everybody, this has been the Blitz Round with Dr. Jitendra Pant. We are going to be back with him in just a moment for the final word of advice. Before we do, I want to tell you where you can go to click on the link that we're going to provide to his talk. It is called Possible End of the Superbug Antibiotic Resistant Bacteria. And you can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com. We'll have a link there. We will also have a LinkedIn link to Dr. Jitendra's LinkedIn account. You can follow up with him. You can connect with him there. And we're going to be right back with Dr. Jitendra Pant for the final word of advice in just a moment. And we're back with Jitendra Pant. It's time for the final word of advice. What is it?
So my final word of advice for those who are about to give a TEDx talk or any kind of public speaking would be understand your audience. And it's not always possible to know who will be attending it, but you have a general gist. For example, when I was preparing my talk, I knew that it's going to be a lot of students, faculty members, and the parents of the students. So I have a journal gist. I knew my audience is already educated. They if not a scientific background, they all come from an educational background. So even when I was giving example of certain bacteria, I picked up examples that are most known. For example, MRSA, for example, E. coli. I did not bring up bacteria that I knew were important, but I did not bring it up because I did not want to confuse my audience. Another thing I would say is, so I am English is not my native language, and for a lot of speaker, it won't be. Try to take pauses, appropriate pauses when you're speaking, when you're giving a TED talk. Try to be comfortable when you are on stage. Know that people trust you. That's why they have come to listen to you. So you hold a lot of credibility there. Be very careful about what you're saying, because your talk can make an impact. And be thorough with the scientific data you are presenting. Cross check it before you throw those numbers to people, because this talk is not just about you impressing your audience as a speaker, but it is also about them taking a message home, and you don't want to give a wrong message, especially because the outreach of TED Talk is very vast. And third thing is, like Nadya said, be yourself and bring some emotions. Again, you're not talking to walls, you're not talking to chairs, you're talking to human beings. Feel their pain, put a little bit of humor, it goes a long way. I have seen one of the best speeches that I have heard are the one that brought a lot of laughters and little bit of tears in audience eyes. So be careful about that, and make sure that you bring humor and emotion in your speech.
Jitendra Pant, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you so much.
All right, that's a wrap. We're going to bring Nadya back up here. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Nadya, what'd you think of that? How about it?
This was beautiful, and I get some advice for myself, and I'm super excited about Dr. Jitendra's work. I actually want to now know how can we protect ourselves from UTI.
Yeah, we watch the talk.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you.
Jitendra, my wife actually moved recently. Well, her family just recently moved from that area. So I spent the last 9 years or so in the Gwinnett County, Northeast Atlanta, and I come to Athens a couple times. My only suggestion for you guys is you got to find a way to spray in a humane way all the mosquitoes around your beautiful botanical gardens, especially in the spring or in the summer, because we're walking around and there's like this bog and it's beautiful, but there were so many mosquitoes. You got the best botanical gardens, but it's like, why is there this bog in the middle that you walk around? So that's my. Maybe somebody else on your team you can delegate for
definitely,
that. So.
Definitely.
My gosh. So we're going to end the broadcast right now. Please feel free to share, wiggle your finger over the share button, help Jitendra, help Dr. Nadya, Dr. Jitendra as well, to spread the impact of their talk and defeat this evil Facebook algorithm. So take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for having